I'd like to call this meeting to order. Would everyone please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation, indivisible. May I have roll call, please?
Mrs. Baker,
Here.
Mrs. Greenberg,
Here.
Mrs. Christensen,
Here.
Mrs. Case,
Here.
Mr. Pantera.
Here.
Next on the agenda, approval of agenda. Dr. Bells.
Thank you. Items approved by consent will not come up for discussion during the meeting, but will be approved when the agenda is adopted. This is possible since members of the governing board receive the agenda along with backup materials at least 24 hours prior to the meeting and have time to review and consider all items. Prior to the agenda being adopted, members of the governing board or audience may ask that an item be removed from the consent agenda and brought to the floor for discussion at the appropriate place on the agenda. I'd like to offer the agenda as posted with the following exceptions. Delete item number G2 and move items from consent agenda G5, G9, and G11 to items for approval. That's G5, 9, and 11 to items for approval.
Does any member of the governing board wish to have an item removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none. Does any member of the audience wish to have an item removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, Mrs. Christensen, may I have a motion to approve the meeting agenda and recommended consent agenda items?
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is governing board statements. Mrs. Baker.
Thank you, President Case. First of all, I was able to attend Pinnacle and PV Online graduations last week, and they were both wonderful events. I was so proud of all of our graduates, and I also loved recognizing the different pathways and opportunities we give our students to become graduates and go off into the world. The other thing I want to say is I want to take a minute to recognize that today is the start of Pride Month. June is a time that we typically celebrate our LGBTQ+ community. This year, however, our focus needs to be on the dangers that this community is facing. Our trans community are literally fighting for their lives and their existence right now. As a reminder, the best way we can keep our students alive is to use affirmed names and pronouns, and by providing a safe and accepting learning environment for our students. Thank you.
Mr. Pantera.
Good afternoon. I too was at a graduation. North Canyon's graduation ceremony was so great to see so many of my students. And they're now taller than I am. Okay, I taught elementary. It was wonderful. Made my heart happy. This makes basically the end of my first year of retirement. It's been an exciting year, fantastic year, and I'm looking forward to doing more with this district. Now that I have all this free time, I want to have you pay attention to this bolo tie I'm wearing. Okay, it's actually 3 bolo ties. Okay, I got 3 of them as from the students at Greyhawk Elementary School. They're 3D printed. Okay, this is kind of STEM work our students are doing. They send it to me for some reason, I don't know. Yeah, it might have been because I asked for it, but I couldn't decide which one to wear, so I wore all 3 of them. The first one's this like a buffalo skull, because they know I was born in Buffalo, New York. Okay, and I'm here. The next one was, I told them when I was there that I went to Brickfest. I'm kind of a Lego guy, and so this is a Lego. And the last one is my favorite color, green. It has my initials, TP, on it. So I had to wear all 3. My little rainbow with my rainbow shirt today. I'm very happy about it, and I'm glad to see the things our students can do. Just give them a little hint, and they do a little bit more than you expect them to do. And thank you, Greyhawk, and thank you all for my first year here on the board.
Oh, excuse me. Thank you. Mrs. Greenberg?
I also had the opportunity to attend graduation for PV Online, which keeps growing and growing and growing. Last year, we were in, I think, the portable next door, and this year we were on stage at PV High School. And want to congratulate all of the grads. And some of them, I know we often look at PV Online as, a place for credit, or yes, grade recovery, credit recovery, et cetera, but there are a lot of students who take it because they can self-pace and indeed graduate early. I think we had at least one or two who graduated in 3 rather than 4 years, thanks to getting their credits through PV Online. So I think, as always, it's great that we, as Mrs. Baker said, that we have so many opportunities and that we have students who take advantage of them. And I also then the next day was with the Matadors at Shadow Mountain for their graduation. As usual, it was an amazing event and affair and graduation. I may be getting the number a little wrong, but as I recall, Mr. Appleton noted that this graduating class was maybe small but mighty and had $8.3 million in scholarships. And I know we had at least one Flynn Scholar. We had a number of students going many places, and including, of course, since Space Force JROTC is there, the sky is literally the limit for some of these folks. But as always, it was wonderful to be with our grads, and I want to thank everybody again, as we are now in summer break, for all of the work that got us to and through this past school year. Thanks.
Thank you. Mrs. Christensen?
I attended Horizon High School's graduation, and I don't know how I'm going to do it next year because my son's graduating from Horizon, and I knew a lot of the students there, and it just was really moving. And even attending Paradise Valley High, I didn't know any students, and I still got teary-eyed. And it just reminded me, too, of my hometown. I didn't realize Principal Dennis had told me that there was such a large population of Hispanics at Paradise Valley High, and it was amazing because it reminded me of our graduation because we all had like 6 names: Sandra, Denise, Lujan, Montes, Garcia, and it just reminded me of my culture from back home and how we take on the names of our parents. So that's why and a lot of people don't know that why a lot of Latinos have so many names. It's because I know my dad's last name was Cardon, and then my mom's was Lujan, and so you kind of add them as you go along. So it just brought back good memories, both of the graduations. So I was really pleased to be there.
Good evening. I was able to attend PV Online's, and it was amazing what these kids do. And I went to Sweetwater, and I had learned some of the stories from the students there because I spoke there. And it is amazing the help we give these kids, and they just want somebody to believe in them. And once they figure out somebody believes in them, they will do whatever they need to graduate. And it's wonderful. And then I spoke at Horizon, and it was fabulous. And I could do all this because Horizon was on Wednesday and others were on Thursday. So anyway, and I was a speaker at Horizon, and so many graduates, and I knew a lot there of the kids coming through. And then after the Sweetwater graduation, I just stuck around on PV campus because all my kids went there. And then I went into the gym and just talked to all the kids. And I got so excited that I watched the entire graduation online. I went home after I shook all their hands, took pictures. I went home and watched the whole graduation. And I have to tell you, these kids are amazing. And I'm so grateful that we help these kids rise and do what they need to. And the speeches were phenomenal. And our future's in good hands with these kids. And I'm really excited about that. Okay, there are no awards and recognitions on the agenda tonight. And next on the agenda is call to the public. Please watch the video.
Call to the Public is about to convene. This portion of today's meeting allows the public the opportunity to address the governing board. Although state law does not require that the governing board hold a call to the public, the Paradise Valley Unified School District and its board have chosen to do so because we believe it's important to hear about concerns and issues from our community. While call to the public is not designed to be a discussion, the board is here to listen. Due to Arizona open meeting law, the governing board cannot respond to, discuss, or take any action on items brought up during this time. However, staff members may be directed to get back to you and address individual concerns. As a reminder, the point of this and every board meeting is to accomplish the business at hand, and to be able to do so in an open and collaborative way. All in attendance are expected to observe meeting rules as well as rules of politeness and decorum, so that we may serve as an example to our students that issues can be discussed in a respectful and civil manner.
Tonight, we have 4 people who have submitted comment cards prior to the start of the meeting. Each speaker will have 3 minutes for remarks. Those who have asked to speak on an agenda items will be recognized at the appropriate time during the meeting. As a reminder, we ask that you please direct your comments to the board. Please state your first and last name when you come to the podium. Our first speaker will be Jennifer Ariza, and second will be, I'm not sure what it is, it's Jay Jennings. I'm not sure what the first name is.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Ariza, and first I want to say thank you to all of you for your time that you put into each of your positions. I also want to personally thank you for your professionalism and how this board meeting is run for each session, and how just encouraging you are. I know we didn't have any student recognition today or staff, but that's normally part of the presentation, and that's very encouraging to see as well. I stand here today as a concerned parent in the Paradise Valley School District, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak. While I do want to continue to declare that pornography should not be allowed in our schools, I want to note that I am hopeful that 2023-2024 will be the year that we as a community take a stand against approving any additional pornographic material for our schools. I also want to talk today about the importance of transparency in the board. Nobody can deny the fact that our government schools are struggling. How can our board help to make the PV school district the choice for families? One area that the board can look at achieving this is by building and maintaining a genuine level of trust with the community. How can this be accomplished? First, if you as a team could commit to being open about the business of the board. I think it's not a surprise to any one of our board members that the general public has no idea how the school board operates. There are many meetings that I have personally attended where items have been voted on that I had no idea even how to research the topic to be an informed citizen. What if this next year the board focused on transparency? Now, why would I recommend this? Because transparency is about information. It's about the ability of the PV community to have full access to information that they are looking for, not just the information that the board is willing to provide. Second, transparency embodies honesty and open communication, because to be transparent, the board must be willing to share information even when it is uncomfortable to do so. So what if we were the district that was known for its transparency with the community? You know that saying, explain it to me like I'm a kindergartner? I encourage each of you to take that stance on all of the board's business. Explain it to us, help your community understand the issues, and dialogue about them here in these meetings. What if Paradise Valley School Board was also known for putting an end to pornographic material being approved? What if we could trust the board to no longer allow this in our schools? What if you drew a line in the sand and said no more pornographic material on your watch? I would encourage you to give these topics serious thought as you prepare for the 2023-2024 school year and the coming years that you serve. Thank you.
Next, Jay Jennings. I don't know what the J is. Okay.
I'll be pretty brief. Yeah. First, I want to say, Sandra, thanks for a great job this year. I know you were new, and I think you're a real advocate for the parents. And that's oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there we go. I want to thank Sandra. I think you did a great job, real advocate for the parents. And the school board should be an advocate for the parents and the students, not the administration or the unions. I also think that the override would be a no vote for me. You have a lot of empty schools. You have a lot of schools that you're renting for $1, maybe not a lot, but a couple that you're renting for $1 for this, that, and the other thing. I think you need to be a better advocate or a better steward of the parents' money, the taxpayer money. That's it. That was brief. Thank you.
Next is Jennifer Cronin, and after her is Melissa Swartz.
Thank you, President Case and Dr. Bales and Cabinet and board members. My name is Jennifer Craning, and I'm here to talk about the School Closure and Boundary Review Committee. This is a committee that was formed and has been meeting since April, purportedly, to look at the 8 schools that we have in the district with fewer than 400 students. I'm here to ask for more transparency about this committee, specifically to add this committee to the section of the website where committees are listed so that parents, community members, and voters have access to the members of the committee, who they are, the meeting notices, and the meeting minutes. I'm asking you to provide just as much effort to communicate updates for this committee as you're putting into communicating about the upcoming bond election. This committee is looking to close or repurpose buildings, and that those decisions impact the maintenance and operating costs and the overall facilities budget for the district. And this is directly related to asking voters to approve a $340 million bond. So please improve the transparency with that process. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa Swartz. Melissa Swartz.
Good afternoon, President Case, Governing Board, Dr. Bales, and Cabinet. I'm Melissa Schwartz. I'm here as a parent, a member of the community, and as a realtor that deals with questions about property taxes often. Going out for the bond to support and sustain our physical structures throughout this large district is critical for many reasons. First, with the number of buildings we have, maintenance is so important. When you push off significant repairs, what begins to happen is you spend more dollars to fix things as they break down. Second, this is part of how our state funds our schools. It expects us to go out to our community and get their support. It is part of the state calculations. Parents, if you're not aware of that, you do need to understand that. Third, and probably most important, is if the bond dollars are not there, then you all will have to figure out how to cover the urgent repairs that will need to be made. Those millions of dollars will not be made up by the state. So where do we get the money to replace a broken air conditioner? From the maintenance and operations budget. So those that are concerned about class sizes and funding for our teachers need to connect the dots. If we do not continue the bond, we will have to reduce the money for our teachers. Remember how difficult it was to adjust for $14 million? Just think about that for $50 million a year. I encourage parents that live in this district to research all the things that the bond pays to maintain. It's so easy to say, let's not replace, the flooring or the turf, because it looks okay today. The problem is getting it back on the schedule can be very difficult. More challenging is deciding which hundreds of students will not get a Chromebook next year because we cannot order the new batch of computers scheduled to be purchased with these funds. We take pride in our one-to-one technology. Without that bond, that will go away. The public needs to know that this is a continuation bond. This means if you're a homeowner, that most likely there will be very little change to the taxes you currently pay. Any increase in the amount for taxes will be due to the increase in your property value. The county tends to run behind in assessing that increase. Our property taxes are some of the lowest in the country, which aligns with the lackluster funding of our schools. As for taxpayers struggling to pay their property taxes, there are county options available to assist them. Again, if we fail to approve this bond, eventually we will have to cover these repairs through M&O and the impact the money available for our teachers. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is Superintendent comments. Dr. Bells.
Thank you, President Case, governing board members, cabinet, and guests. Just a couple quick comments. Certainly congratulations to the wonderful graduation ceremonies that were conducted last week. The feedback that I received from all 8 ceremonies was very positive. And a special thank you to our administrators, our teachers, and our support staff for making each and every one of those unique and special. Also like to send a shout out to our very own school psychologist, Dr. Stacy Anderson, who wrote an article, Preparing for School Crises. She did this with 3 other school psychologist colleagues, one of them from Tempe and 2 from Pennsylvania. And it made the front page of the National Association of School Psychologists quarterly publication. So we are very happy to have somebody like Dr. Anderson speaking locally and nationally on behalf of school psychologists and how they prepare and support students. So please join me in congratulating and thanking her for her local, state, and national advocacy efforts. And last but not least, I just have a question for Mr. Long. Since this is your last board meeting as an administrator, do you have any idea how many that is over 34 years?
I never counted, but 27 years, because 7 as a teacher. I did
7
not
as a
count.
teacher, 27. Well, as this is your last board meeting and your
My
last day
board
next
meeting.
week, thank you for serving PV schools.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And those conclude my comments, Mrs. Case.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the items for approval. Dr. Bells.
President Case and governing board members, and yes, tonight we present for approval an administrative recommendation in the Transportation Department. Dr. Holmes.
I apologize. Thank you, Dr. Bales. Madam President, members of the board, Michael Masillo is currently the Mechanic Technician 4 in our Transportation Department. He has been a valued member of the department since 2006. If approved, he will receive salary and benefits in accordance with the COA bargaining agreement. We recommend you approve Mr. Masillo to be the next Transportation Mechanic Supervisor.
May I have a motion to approve the recommendation to hire Michael Masillo for the position of Transportation Supervisor as presented?
So moved.
Any board members wishing to make a comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Good luck. That's a hard job. Next on the agenda is Dr. Bells.
Item for approval H2, President Case, governing board members, cabinet, and guests. Tonight we present for approval a recommendation to distribute additional compensation dollars for all employee groups as a result of the recently adopted state budget. Dr. Holmes.
Thank you, Dr. Bales. Madam President, members of the board. As I believe you are all aware, the state budget included dollars in excess of our projected budget. Earlier this spring, you approved contingency language placed in all our employee contracts that provides direction as to how we will allocate such additional dollars. The first direction provided is to eliminate furlough days. We have received enough additional ongoing dollars to eliminate all furlough days, including both the day approved by the governing board in December, as well as the days agreed to during bargaining. We have already communicated changes in pay and work days to all employees. The state also provided additional one-time dollars we can use for compensation. And per the bargaining process, we engaged the association leaders and agreed to recommend a one-time payout of 3.75% of base pay to all employees to be paid out on a date in October to be determined. With that, we recommend your approval of this agenda item as presented.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the new MOU for the bargaining groups for the 2020-24 as presented?
So moved.
Any board members wishing to make a comment? Go ahead. Mrs. Christensen.
I'm really excited that the teachers are not going to have furlough days and that it is, while we'd like to give more to the teachers, I'm glad that it is something additional that was unexpected. So I'm pretty happy.
I'm thrilled about it. Having to set up a classroom, yes. You guys need those days. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? I can never say that word. Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is consideration and approval of superintendent's performance-based pay. Let's see. Don't think I have any public comment on this. Okay. May I have a motion in accordance with the terms of the superintendent's contract dated June 20th, 2022, approve the superintendent's performance pay in the amount of $12,500 by June 20th, 2023. What? I'm not finding it. Was it done on a yellow card or a blue card? It might have got stuck to another piece of paper. One moment. Did we? Because she said comment. I mean, I wrote it down because she told me that. No. Oh, excuse me. I got my H's and my G's mixed up. I apologize. Emily Weaver had a comment.
Thank you, President Case. My name is Emily Wagner. And I understand that the approval of Dr. Bales' bonus is a foregone conclusion, and I'm not here to dispute that. But I would like to talk about what I think should be some items going forward in the 2023-2024 calendar year for superintendent goals and objectives. Looking at 22 through 23, your stated goals and objectives, I see that the first one was enhanced teaching and learning opportunities to expand student achievement, but most of what I'm seeing on here relates to behavioral aspects of student achievement and not so much academic. So going forward, I would love to see as a parent in the district some sort of goal and objective for increasing student achievement, whether that be reading scores increasing, math literacy, those types of things. Also, when it comes to improving communication with parents and community, we had a community comment earlier today about how she feels as a parent, the community communication that goes out from the district hasn't been very effective. And I'm a very active person coming to board meetings, and I actively seek out what's going on within the district, but it takes a lot of effort on my part as an active parent to seek out that information. So whatever we're doing for communication going forward maybe needs to be reevaluated. Also, I looked all over the website. I could not find anything available to me as a community member for what rubric was used in evaluating Dr. Bales' approval of these goals. And I'm not saying you didn't meet them. I would just like to know, do we as the public have access to the information that he provided to you as the board for meeting these objectives? I would love to see it because these are very broad with no specifics. And if you met those goals, I would really love to see what those were. Thank you.
Thank you. May I provide some clarification? It- We spent hours going through all of the goals and the backup materials. Literally, it was a book this thick. So there are many things. I'm not sure how to get certain things out to the public because some things are just too much. And so, but we're very fortunate to have Dr. Bells as our superintendent and going forward, we have a new board and we'll be making new goals for the new year. So a little bit of clarification there. Okay, so may I have a motion in accordance? Oh, we already did that. Excuse me. Do any of the board members wish to make a comment? Did she move? Oh, she didn't. Okay, you, Sandra, could I have a motion to approve the superintendent's contract, performance-based pay? I said that before, of 12, and then we interrupted, of 12,500 by June 20th, 2023.
So I would like to make.
But you have to move it before you can make comments.
What happens if I don't move the motion?
Somebody else will.
Okay.
So moved.
Okay, so are there any comments? Okay, Carrie, excuse me, Mrs. Baker?
Thank you, President Case. I just want to say that as a parent, community member, and board member, I very much appreciate all that Dr. Bales has done and his commitment to our strategic plan and how he brings it to the forefront of everything. And student success is also very important to him. And just thank you for your service to the district, Dr. Bales.
Are there any other comments down here? Mrs. Greenberg?
Yeah, I'd essentially like to say exactly what Mrs. Baker said, so I'll be even hopefully briefer, but the position of superintendent is 24/7, 365 days a year, and Dr. Bales steps in every single moment. And I agree that student achievement is first and foremost the goal that he has kept in mind. I think that comes through in the strategic plan. I appreciate that we have a strategic plan because we have gone for too long without one. And I appreciate the commitment moving forward that the goals and objectives and indicators and everything else about that plan provide us a path forward that we will follow. And I too thank you for your service.
Mr. Pantera?
Well, I'd want to thank Dr. Bales as well. First half of the year, first time on the board. You've been very supportive of me, helped me out with any questions I've had, listened to me, the things that were concerned to me, made very clear to me how the things run here, even the things, I've been here 43 years, and I still discovered a lot of things about the inner workings of the district that I wasn't aware of before. Thank you very much. You're very hardworking, and I appreciate what you've done for us. Thank you.
Any comments down here? Mrs. Christensen?
I would like to make a motion to amend the dollar amount for the performance-based pay to align closer to what the educators are getting, about 4%, which would be about 8,400 rather than the original 12,500.
Do I ask that? We don't have to have a second. Okay, so consistent with how I did it last time, and we're going to talk about this, do we have a second to go forward on this?
I believe a second is not required as I've been researching this issue. I know that Dr. Bales had requested information from council, but council does not they were not well versed in the history of PVUSD board, and the reason why seconding of motions were removed, it was to protect the minority board member. And it is not required whether it's an original motion or an amendment to a motion. I know that the attorney had indicated that we would then go to Robert's Rule of Order. But if we look at the board policies, all of the motions have been removed. The language for motions have been removed. Since we don't have a parliamentarian here, and I've been corrected, even my first meeting.
I will go
excuse
ahead
me,
and second it, then we can take a vote on it. Would that
Okay.
be okay?
That would be
Okay,
great.
I will second it, and we can take a vote on it, and then we can move on. Is that okay?
But I would like to come back to this at some point because we need to understand the rules of order and how we conduct business here.
And we have
and-
already planned on doing that. That is
Okay,
great.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so you've made a motion. So now we have two motions on the floor. A motion to amend. So we will take a vote on the motion to amend, and then we'll move to the other motion. Okay, so motion to amend to change the dollar amount to
8,400, consistent with what? closer to what the teacher would get.
400. All those in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Motion does not pass. Thank you. And now we have another motion on the floor, but I'd like to make my comments before we do. I've had this opportunity to work closely as president with Dr. Bales this year, and I've avoided being president for many years, but I have appreciated his commitment to this district. He is so hardworking. He spends hours. And one of the things I appreciate the most is he is committed to achievement for our children. Period. I have felt that. That is his first agenda. And how you achieve that is many ways. And you can't have a disrupted classroom, as I've gone through this week, if kids are not participating and listening to the teacher. So you cannot have achievement unless you have kids all participating. So there are many ways to get to achievement, but I can guarantee in all of my conversations that is foremost on his mind, whether we have more kids excelling in high school or more children learning to read and read fluently. Everything he talks about is achievement for our students. So in case that is questioned, I can tell you it's not. And that to me is the most important thing we do as a school, is having our children learn and achieve and grow and improve from year to year. That's most important in my book. So we have a motion on the floor already. It has been moved. So going back to the original motion, all those in favor?
I would like to discuss, I would like to provide discussion on this item before we before we vote.
Okay, we can have more comment. Who would like to make a comment? Anybody else? Would you like to make a comment? Go ahead.
I don't argue that Dr. Bales is not doing a good job. I know that he's a new superintendent. I think he's done some great things, a lot, especially in Goal 1, really looking at district-wide initiatives as frameworks. These are in the beginning stages. However, I don't, sometimes it takes a long time to see the fruits of your labor. I do want to address the point about being hardworking. I believe that every member of the PV district is hardworking. And as CEO of the PV district, that's the way I see him, as head and CEO. A CEO, when you're looking at performance-based pays, it's based on specific metrics and numbers, not just hardworking and subjective things that are not measurable. We have declining enrollment in this district. We've lost over 900 kids this year alone. Our achievement, if we look at metrics and our achievement scores, we still have a lot of our students that are not proficient in English and math. And I would like, in the future, I know that in this evaluation it's already passed, but in the future, I would like to see us tie these performance-based metrics to performance, something that's measurable, not just a feeling that says, well, you're hardworking and you deserve it. Because I believe that everybody in this district, works hard, from bus drivers to educators to the superintendent and everybody on the cabinet, but we have to have something specific and measurable in order to give the maximum amount of bonus pay, because it is a pay, a performance-based pay increase.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to make a comment? If not, we'll take a vote. So all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Motion passes 4 ayes and 1 nay. Next on the agenda is Dr. Bells.
Thank you, President Case, Governing Board members. Tonight, we present for approval to approve a one-year lease with the Earth and Space Expedition Center for part of the facility usage at the Foothills campus during the next school year. Dr. Jarris.
Thank you, President Case, Governing Board members, Dr. Bales, and Cabinet. The Earth and Space Expedition Center was formerly known as the Challenger Space Center, and they currently rent 18 classrooms, the Media Center, and the cafeteria on the Foothills campus. The remainder of the campus is used by our First Things First program for early childhood, the district's occupational and physical therapists and their equipment, and the lead nurses. In the past year, the Earth and Space Expedition Center developed a new board, which has helped them create a new brand with additional programming. They were asking for a 2-year lease, but we are offering a 1-year lease to see how well their new programming is received by our schools. We are available to answer any questions you may have, and we recommend approval.
Thank you. Are there any board members wishing to make a comment?
Does that have to be moved first, or we can just comment now?
There is a comment by Nicole Klutwick on this lease.
I'm not sure what's going on this meeting, but I also submitted a comment card earlier that got bypassed, and I'm not sure why. It was on the travel. That should have been pulled from consent. I'm not sure why it wasn't pulled from consent.
It was pulled from consent. It's later in the
Coming in
agenda.
the future.
Okay,
in-
good.
later
I'm
on
not
the
used
agenda.
to, I'm not used to this new order. Okay, so regarding this particular topic, I find it very, very disconcerting. I'm usually here talking about financial issues, and this is a financial issue. We are leasing this building for $1. $1. And as justification for this $1, you guys have provided in the agenda, page, it says 7 of 7, but I don't know that it actually is, an in-kind service in lieu of rent calculation, which uses 32,316 free student passes at $7 a piece. While meanwhile, our budget says we'll only have 26,000 students. Why are we padding this by 21.8%? Let's go on to the fact that we are not using, my children have been in the district for many years. They do not go to this on an annual basis. This is not something that's happening. Add to that they're calling this mission thing $500 per student. Okay, my child did go 1 year to it. It was a few-hour thing and not nearly worth $500. We go to the Space Center for far, far less. This whole calculation coming up to $238,000 worth of in-kind is fluff. It's meaningless. And even with this huge padding of this in-kind services, it still only comes out to $7.7 per year in rent, which is way, way below market rent, way below. This is insulting to your constituents and the taxpayers and the people who you're asking to pass a bond on. Thank you.
May I have a motion to approve resolution number 535, First Amendment to the property lease agreement between Paradise Valley Unified School District and the Earth and Space Expedition Center of Arizona as presented?
So moved.
Any board members wishing to make a comment?
Sorry.
Yes, Mrs. Baker.
Can maybe Dr. Jarris clarify some of the things there? Because I believe it adds more value to our district than the speaker led on And so I would like if Dr. Jarris could clarify some of that. for
Sure.
us.
And this final page here, this part of the original draft from the original lease 4 years ago. So obviously the student count number is different than it would have been when this was originally drafted 4 years ago. So this addendum, the in-kind services certainly can be updated to regard the change the student count. The $500, that's a misread on the cost per student. We are charged $500 per class. So that's not a per student setting. So each class that goes, the school is being charged $500 that they receive in kind, those services for free. As far as when this initial draft was created, when this lease was created in 2019, the idea was that our students would benefit from the STEAM experiences that we're able to have in the neighborhood, as well as the idea that the community would benefit from having access to this. Whether they choose to use it or not, it still was considered a benefit that we would have this in our neighborhood that students and families could benefit from all year round.
Can I ask a question too?
Mrs. Christensen?
How many classes utilize this per year? Do we have any metrics on that?
I do, and that's been the rocky journey, to be honest with you. 2019-20 was their first year in operation. They were given access to the building and end of the summer there, and so they spent the first semester setting up their mission statements and mission setting. And then as we were getting classes signed up, we had a few participating, and then COVID happened. So for the rest of that school year, from March on, they were not open. The following school year in 2020-21, we were virtual for half the year, and the other half of the year, we were not doing field trips. 2021, 2022, we started the year with mask mandates on buses, and we had so many teachers out that a lot of schools did not do field trips. And at the end of that year, we met with them and understood that they were going over a different new leadership change. And so we met with them this fall. This fall would have been that follow-up. They have a new board. They've proposed new programming for us. And that is when they asked for a 2-year lease to extend, and we said we really need to see, where our schools are involved with it. This spring, we only had about 6 schools participate in a variety of ways. We have next year about 15 that are interested in exploring more, but we also have a mechanism in place to get feedback from the schools to determine whether or not they plan to continue to return and provide some qualitative feedback for the center as well.
Okay, so just for clarification, so the in-kind estimate of 280, sorry, I don't have my glasses, 238,580, we've missed the mark on that?
We've missed the mark, and I do not have access to how many people have taken advantage of the free student passes. We've been monitoring the classroom participants, which has been, like I said, about 6 classrooms this year, as well as a school that used them for a STEAM night at night. So.
Are there any other comments from the board? Mrs. Christensen?
Point of information for Mrs. Berrigan. And I realize this is only $1 rent, but can you provide clarification on what we can use the income for when we do get rent from, like, such as this? I know it's only $1, but what bucket does that go into in terms of finance? And can we use that for other things?
It goes into what's called the Civic Center Fund, Fund 515, and it can be used for general M&O purposes.
May I make a comment? The school is used for, Dr. Bells, could you explain what else the school is used for?
We have other program, First Things First program is there. We have itinerant staff such as OT speech that use that space. The lead nurses also use it. All of the CPR equipment, CPR dummies and things like that are stored there. So the rest of the campus is used for itinerant staff and First Things First programming.
And First Things First, okay. Thank you. I know when things are started, and it started right before COVID, and that just has taken some time. I'm appreciative that we're doing a 1-year lease and not a 2-year lease. That was very thoughtful. Thank you. So, any other board members wishing to make a comment? Mrs. Greenberg?
I guess 2 questions, or I don't know, not question. If I still want to call it Challenger, wasn't there, what would we be doing with that space potentially? I mean, do we have another option that we would be using that space for?
Yeah, not at this time. We would use our process for much as we would this fall in creating a committee to look at facilities usage. But we have some ideas, but they're just ideas, big picture ideas.
If, for example, this lease were not to be approved, how long would it take them to move out?
We have a 60-day notice, I believe, in the lease. Is that right, Dr. Jarris?
That's correct.
Yep.
Okay. I'm not saying that because it's my intent to vote no. I don't intend to vote no, but I agree that this was the partnership. I think when it was first proposed, we had big plans, and I think COVID has stuck a pin in those quite extensively. And I think as Mrs. Case said, I appreciate that we're looking at a 1-year rather than 2-year lease, because this is, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And I think this is the first year we'll really be able to tell that. So, thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Motion passes 4 ayes and 1 nay. Next on the agenda is Dr. Bells.
President Case, Governing Board members, Cabinet and guests, and tonight we present for approval the revisions to the Family Student Handbook for the 23-24. We had first reading at the last meeting, and to summarize any changes since the first reading 2 weeks ago, Mr. Long.
Thank you. Good afternoon, President Case, Governing Board members, and Dr. Bells. Today I present to you for a second reading revisions to the Family Student Handbook for 23-24. After hearing concerns from our first reading, we reached out to council to ensure we were accurate in our interpretation of student emancipation and also working with students who turn 18. Legal counsel confirmed that the practice of informing and involving parents of 18-year-old students is allowable. It has been recommended by council that the section heading be changed from emancipation to adult students to more accurately describe PV School's practice of working with students who are 18 years or older. The recommended new language states, as a matter of practice, when a student turns 18 and continues to live with his or her parent or guardian, the administration may continue to provide the parents and guardians with access to educational records, notice of disciplinary actions, and the ability to approve absences and field trips. For emancipated students who provide documentation, our current practices will continue, as those students will retain all education rights to make their own decision. In addition, under absent policies, proposed new language for 18-year-old students was removed. With these additional changes, we recommend approval.
Thank you. I do not believe we have any public comment on this. May I have a motion to approve the revisions to the Family Student Handbook for 2023-2024 as presented?
So moved.
Any board members wishing to make a comment? Mrs. Christensen?
Thank you for updating the language and checking into the emancipation, because I thought that was incorrect initially. So thank you for doing that.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is Dr. Bells.
President Case, Governing Board members, Cabinet guests, and tonight we present for approval the revisions to the Family Athlete Handbook for the 23-24 school year. And to summarize any changes since its first reading 2 weeks ago, Mr. Long.
Good afternoon, President Case, Governing Board members, and Dr. Bells. Tonight, I present to you for a second reading revisions to the Family Athlete Handbook for the 23-24 school year. There was an additional change to the handbook made after our first reading on May 18th. Hazing was added to the Code of Conduct table summary. This was the first year that this handbook went through the call to committee process. The committee worked hard to make significant edits, but we look forward to further work on this document to make it more user-friendly for the 24-25 school year. With hazing added to the Code of Conduct table summary, we recommend approval.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion to approve revisions to the Family Athletic Handbook for 2023-24 as presented?
So moved.
Any board members wishing to make a comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda, Dr. Bells.
President Case, governing board members, cabinet and guests, and tonight we present for approval a price increase to a carton of milk for the 23-24 school year. This would be an increase to the a la carte milk price that we currently charge students from 25 cents to 50 cents. We recommend approval, and Ms. Berrigan is available to answer any additional questions.
I don't see any comments on this from the public. May I have a motion to approve the proposed nutrition and wellness milk carton price increase for the 2023-24 school year as presented?
So moved.
Any board members wishing to make a comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda, Dr. Bells.
Thank you, President Case, governing board members, cabinet and guests, and tonight we present for approval the proposed fiscal year 23-24 State of Arizona school budget, school annual expenditure and revenue budget. Ms. Berrigan, would you please present?
Thank you, Dr. Bales and President Case. I think you have something to say, it looks like.
Yes, I do have something to say. I unfortunately have to leave, but I want the public to know that I spent over an hour speaking with Mrs. Berrigan yesterday, and all my questions have been answered. And I so appreciate her knowledge. And school finances are very complicated. And I've been doing this for a long time. So thank you very much. I appreciate all your information and answering all my questions. And I feel that this is a fiscally sound program that we have, but I have to leave now. So thank you. And Mrs. Baker will now take over as preside as President Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mrs. Case. I'm always happy to answer any questions that anyone has related to the budget. The budget forms we did not know would come out in time for the budget, and I had the budget prepared on last year's forms, and less than an hour later, the ADE and Auditor General's Office released the forms. So I did all the work all over again, along with Mrs. Shapiro. But we got it done. It does help to have the budget on the new forms. It uploads more smoothly to ADE's website, and there's no potential for an audit finding of doing them on the old forms. So we did get them on the new forms. Go ahead and click for me. Okay, you'll watch me. Thank you. Okay. The presentation outline will discuss the K-12 state budget highlights. Just want to remind everybody where we're at since it's been a few weeks since it's passed. Discuss the other revenue assumptions made in putting together this year's budget along with the expenditure factors. Reveal quick pieces of information about overall budget amounts for various funds. Discuss property taxes and then the truth in taxation piece of property taxes, as well as a little bit I've added this year on transparency and accountability that I hope will provide some information to people that they maybe didn't know previously. For the K-12 state budget highlights, my first and favorite item on there is the override of the constitutional aggregate expenditure limit. And that was done already this year for next year. So we don't have to go into next year with sleepless nights and Dr. Bales and I going back and forth about how likely we think it's going to be that the aggregate expenditure limit will be overridden before a certain date. So we appreciate them doing that and looking for a long-term solution on that moving forward. There's the increases to the base level amount. The base level is essentially the amount we get per pupil of 2.92% this year. So it's going from $4,774.27 to $4,914.71 per student. That includes the 2% statutory requirement. And just as a reminder, we get inflation or 2%, whichever is less. I think we all still know that inflation is much more than 2%. But they would cap us at 2%. And the way we get the additional 0.92% is from a repeal of the results-based funding program, which had $68 million in the budget ongoing, and instead that $68 million will be put towards the base amount per pupil. So we get to 2.92% of an increase. So the next bullet just says that 2% was already expected and accounted for in the district's budget. And I indicate that after each of these bullets so you know which pieces we were already expecting versus which pieces are new. And I'll delineate a little bit more about those dollar amounts in future slides. Because as approved by the board this evening, we're doing the 3.75% one-time expenditure and then removing the furlough days with those new monies. Additionally, there's an increase from 0.018 to 0.022 in a Group B support level weight that was added next year for free and reduced lunch program. And that was already expected, so that was already planned for in our budget this year. Then there was an additional district additional assistance increase beyond what was already expected. We had already expected $22 million, but they added another $20 million in there, which brings the increase to 9.38%. And for K-8, we're going from 502.33 per student to 549.45. And then for 9-12, we're going from $626.98 to $685.79. So again, the $22 million was already expected, $20 million was unexpected. And then another unexpected piece was the basic state aid supplement of $300 million statewide in one-time funding. And that will be distributed using weighted student count. And again, that's just one-time funding. So I'll talk in a moment about what we're using those pieces for. The other revenue assumptions, always we take into consideration what we're doing with average daily membership. And as a reminder, when we propose and adopt the budget, the district has, and I continue to estimate high in the actual budget forms, not in the budget that we base everything and our expenditures off of, but in these forms, we include a little bit more for ADM so that we don't lose out on any capacity in our M&O override should we end up with more students enrolled in the district than projected through our demographic report. Also, there was an increase in the classroom site fund per student funding of $50 per weighted ADM to $758. So that was a nice little unexpected increase again this year. For our expenditure factors, starting with salaries and benefits, because if you remember, salaries and benefits are 85% of our budget. All of those furlough days, as Dr. Holmes already mentioned, were eliminated, including the ones approved by the board in December, as well as those from the bargaining process in the spring. And those totaled to about $1.9 million. That was within less than $50,000 of what we received for ongoing money. So those two numbers matched up really nicely for us to be able to eliminate those furlough days. Additionally, certified employees have the base salary increase of $1,950. That was movement of some classroom site fund monies, and a little bit less would be paid in performance-based pay and paid in their base salary instead. But we're still able to maintain a very nice performance-based pay amount per teacher of $4,925 as well out of classroom site fund. In terms of the other expenses, if you remember from my chart all spring long, we moved the 0.17% of Medicaid back to M&O from the fiscal year 23 pay increase that was determined in the prior year. We have the January 1st, 2023 minimum wage adjustment of 6%. Excuse me, that should say 2024. We're already in 2023. So of 6%, the inflation costs of goods and services of 6%. That's what we were estimating or what CPI was at that point in time. We are expecting a utility cost increase of approximately 10%. If you remember, APS is doing a potential large increase this December. And then Arizona State Retirement System increase of 0.12%. So with that unexpected revenue I mentioned, and it's just a reiteration of what Dr. Holmes has already shared, the ongoing M&O for PVUSD was just under $1.9 million. Again, that's $68 million from the statewide movement of the results-based funding into the base support amount. And with a combination of the additional $20 million statewide of district additional assistance, our district's portion of that was about $477. And if you remember, we put 90, or moving forward into next year, 90% of DAA will go into M&O and 10% goes into unrestricted capital. So 90% of that 477 is $430 million. Those two together equal the $1,890,000 of ongoing unexpected revenue for the district. With the one-time M&O funds for PVUSD, we're expecting about $7.2 million. And that's that basic state aid supplement that we talked about of $300 million. They have additional funds one time in the state budget, and so have given that for one-time expenditures for districts to be able to use. And that is what we will use to do the 3.75% payout for staff in the fall. These are our basic operating budgets with M&O, classroom site fund, Medicaid reimbursement, and indirect cost. I think everybody knows what M&O is. It supports our day-to-day operations, mostly salaries and benefits. Classroom Site Fund is from sales tax revenue as well as revenue from state land trust sales. And that was approved by Prop 301 originally and then re-upped by the legislature in 2020, I believe. In addition, the Medicaid is medical services that are provided by the district. And that generally includes nursing services that we provide. We can get reimbursements for, and even some transportation costs. With the indirect cost, that is what we receive as a percentage of the grants that we have, both federal and state grants. We can take an indirect cost, and that helps support the overhead of running those grant programs for things like accounts payable and the human resources components that it takes to be able to run those grants. And then Instructional Improvement Fund, most people know as gaming monies or gaming revenues. When people go out and have a good time, we appreciate that, and we'll take a little bit of that piece of the pie and support our staff with that. 50% of that goes to cover our teacher medical costs, and then the remainder is generally used for dropout prevention programs in accordance with the statute for Instructional Improvement Fund allowable expenses. Next are the capital fund expenditures. We have our unrestricted capital, which is made up of budget balance carry forward and unrestricted capital, our $6.4 million district additional assistance override, and then the 10% of the DAA that we get from the state and put into the unrestricted capital fund. We have a bond building fund of $65 million expected for expenditures next year. We may not spend all of that, but as you know, we make budget revisions throughout the year and we'll revise any of these budgets accordingly when needed. And then we have the adjacent ways budget, and I will talk about that a little bit more. Actually, a lot more in the next few slides. Federal and state grants and expenditure budgets. Our federal grants are a little over $42 million. Large portion of that is still ESSER, but we have our two biggest federal grants aside from ESSER, which are Title and IDEA, which is for special education. Some of the state grants include things like the college credit exam incentives, school safety, vocational ed, first things first, early literacy, and Project Momentum. With debt service and sort of the other funds kind of put together here, debt service is the paying off of those bonds at $58 million expected for this year. Community education, which is our before and after school care and preschool programs of approximately $9 million. Food service expenditures run approximately $10 million. Insurance proceeds were required statutorily to have a hearing to vote for the $200,000 in insurance proceeds, and that's where we purchase replacement items from any insurance claims we have. Oftentimes we don't actually purchase anything out of there, but we do put a budget amount in there so that we can have the hearing part on that, and that we do at the June 22nd board meeting should we need to expend anything out of that fund. Of those other funds, that includes things like Civic Center, which we talked a little bit about earlier, tax credit, student activities, and the list of them is on the right-hand side of page 6 of the budget if you want the full list of those other funds. Next is tax rates. This table compares the 22-23, so the year we're still sitting in, to what's estimated for 23-24. The primary tax rate from this current year that we're in was 3.5757, and the estimated for next year is 3.4912. The primary tax rate is the local taxpayer of the district's portion of state equalization formula. Every district, because of the difference in the property wealth within the district, covers a different amount of the state equalization formula. In the case of PV, we have a fairly high property wealth district. So the expected for next year is that we'll be covering about 69% of the state equalization formula, and the state will cover about 31% of the state equalization formula. And that's the primary tax rate. The secondary tax rate includes the M&O override, the capital override, and our bonds. And you can see there the numbers and the differences, each of them expected to go down just a little bit so that the total secondary tax rate is also going down a little bit as well, from 2.2826 to 2.2029. You combine the primary and the secondary tax rate, and the total for estimated next year is 5.6942, which is a little bit less, about 16 cents less than our current year of 22-23. And just in case anybody's wondering, the total property value in PV School District is about $4.4 billion and growing. Next, I'll move into truth in taxation. And all of this presentation I share again at the June 22nd board meeting, and I'll probably go through it a little bit quicker then. To me, it's important that the board and the community have all of the information now, and then we can reiterate those things for the second piece, which includes the hearing and the actual adoption of the budget. And at that time, we have to have the hearing for truth in taxation. But what truth in taxation is something that was implemented in 1997 for districts. And we disclosed to voters the intent to raise taxes for some expenditures that are outside of the budget. And there's a half dozen, maybe 8 items that need to be included in this. And as usual, adjacent ways is our only item that we have for truth in taxation. This year, our expected adjacent ways budget is going to be $4,334,000. And just to kind of put that in perspective, our total budget's going to be about $502 million. So it's less than 1% of our total budget. And there's this requirement for this truth in taxation piece. And I sort of wish it had more to do with the table that I previously presented, which is why I include that table. I think that taxpayers in the community are concerned about their total tax rate, not just a very small portion of their tax rate. And so that's why that additional information is included for our community for transparency purposes. In terms of the legal requirement, we determine if the proposed budget includes the truth in taxation hearing. And because we are levying for adjacent ways, we are required to have the truth in taxation hearing. We have a scheduled published notice to go into the newspaper on June 8th. And then we hold that public hearing during or prior to the adopted budget. And so we do that with the June 22nd board meeting. At that time, we do a roll call vote of the governing board. And then after that vote is taken, we notify the Property Tax Oversight Commission of the hearing and vote. And that's another form of accountability and transparency for school districts. This is a copy of the actual notice that will appear in the paper, and there's some stipulation and guidelines about the fact that it has to be a quarter of a page and a certain font size and all of those things. So it's certainly prominent when published in the paper. So you'll see that in the paper, but if you move on one more slide there, please. Thank you. With the notice of the tax increase of the one-time levy of about $4.3 million, it reads that the taxes on a $100,000 home would increase from $0 to $9 and call it 76 cents. I think that's a little bit misleading because it sort of implies that this year, 22-23, our tax rate for adjacent ways was 0. And that's not the case. That tax rate of 0 comes from the original 1997 implementation of the truth in taxation notice. And at that time, every district's was 0. So really last year, I additionally include this information for transparency purposes. Our adjacent ways tax rate was $6 and call it 30 cents on a $100,000 home. So the actual tax increase for adjacent ways between 22-23 and 23-24 will be about $3.47. And just to put it in perspective, that's about a tax rate of 29 cents per month on a $100,000 home. And if you can look at your tax notice and determine what your tax rate is for your assessed values on a $100,000 home, that would be on there. You can just multiply the assessed value. If your home is worth $200,000 assessed value, you would multiply the 29-cent tax rate times 2 or whatever your home value happens to be. In the next bullet, I just include the definition of adjacent ways and the things that can be used on, and have sort of bolded some of those pieces, such as improving any public way adjacent to a parcel, adjacent to a school district parcel specifically. These generally include things like construction of a sidewalk, sewers, utility line, roadways, and other related improvements. And then the next piece is to assure safe ingress and egress from public school property directly adjacent to the public way for buses and fire equipment. Almost always, at least in my prior district and my time here, our adjacent ways projects are related to fire lanes and making sure that those are paved properly in case we have any issues with that. So that's that safe ingress and egress for a school district that we're able to do. These are some of the locations of our demo of the current fire lanes and paving of new fire lanes and the schools that will undergo those projects this year. And our budget falls within the guidelines of ARS 15995 for that. And then finally, I just want to talk a little bit about transparency and accountability. It's, something that I take pride in what we do with our school districts, and school districts in general in the state of Arizona have a lot of transparency and accountability regulations that we have to follow. And then I just included what that is for districts. So if the district has a check mark under there, that means we do that. If the charter also does that, a charter school district, which is also a public school, if they do that, they have a check mark there, and then private schools, because they now do receive public funding. Some of these things include, I won't list all of them, there's a few slides here, but annual external financial audit, school districts and charter schools undergo those. An annual external Arizona Auditor General Compliance Questionnaire review, that's over 40 pages now, where the auditors have to ask these compliance questions of every school district, and school districts do that. Charter schools and private schools don't. We also have food service compliance audits every 3 years. For some charters do participate in the National Food Service Program. So if they do, they also would undergo those audits every 3 years. We also have the Arizona Auditor General Performance Audit if our name happens to be picked in a year. We have the Arizona Auditor General Classroom Spending Report. We follow the uniform system of financial records so that folks have an understanding and an accountability of an account code, along with a description of what that is to determine what that cost is going to be. Charter schools have a different one they have to follow, and it's an abbreviated form of that. And then we also have to comply with public records requests, as do charter schools. I said I wasn't going to read them all, but I just did. A few more here. I'll just pick a few out on this one. This is more about governing board meetings. We have to have one once a month while school's in session. We cannot have family members on governing boards. We are required to pay into Arizona State Retirement System. Charter schools can choose to do that, and some do choose to do that. Another one is that we complete an annual comprehensive financial report. That's that thicker, big report that we get after the audit that's 160, 170 some pages, and pulls in data from all throughout the district. We have to adhere to Title 15. I brought some visual aids this evening. This is the Education Code from 2006, 2007, and this is the Education Code from 21-22. The book itself is bigger. The margins have gotten tighter, and there's about 700 more pages in this Education Code than there was before. The bulk of which are for school districts, some of which are for charters. And there is, I had some trouble finding what accountability pieces were here for the ESAs, but did find on ADE's website that there are some statutes that are pertinent to ESAs, and noted that in that first column there. So Arizona Revised Statute 152401 through 152405 have some accountability measures for ESAs. And moving into next year, there were some additions in the state budget to include some additional accountability measures for private schools as well. And that's really about like reporting students and if they have a disability and where they came from and whether or not they're ELL. It's not as detailed as the reporting that districts or charters have to do for enrollment of their students or attendance of their students. Just a couple of other items on there that I included as well. I thought that, we talk often about transparency and accountability, and really wanted to reflect in here a lot of measures that school districts have. And frankly, even the visual aid of the Title 15, I think probably speaks to people in terms of understanding all of that accountability and transparency that we have to have and want to have. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Yes, ma'am.
Well, the good news about
Wait,
ARS.
I have to make a motion first.
Okay.
May I have a motion in accordance with Arizona Revised Statutes 15-905 to approve the proposed fiscal year 2023-24 State of Arizona's school district annual expenditure and revenue budget as presented?
So moved.
Any board members wishing to make a comment? Mrs. Christensen?
Yeah, just some clarification on the adjacent ways. It's my understanding that so school districts have to pay a portion, and then the cities also pay a portion, or do we?
No, I think
is-
you're probably
that-
thinking of the hawk light that we did last year. That was a little bit of a unique situation,
Right.
and they're taking care of some of the pieces of that hawk light that'll go in front of Shadow Mountain, and should be ready to go before school starts next year. And we covered 200,000 of that. Traffic control lights are one of the pieces that we can do for safe ingress and egress. So that could include a full traffic light, or in that case, a hawk light. I think that's what you're referring to.
Okay, so what you presented, it's 100% the responsibility of this districts.
Yes,
to-
because they're all on our property.
Sure.
Yeah, on or adjacent to our property.
Okay. And then I was going to say the good news about ARS 15 is it's online and searchable, so you don't have to carry those big books around.
It is, but actually some of the book has history in it that you can't find online. So that's why I don't order a new one every year, but on occasion I have to order a new one, so I have the history as well.
Any other comments? Ms. Greenberg?
Yeah, I just want to thank Ms. Bergen and her staff for not just doing this once, but twice in terms of the forms and formatting, particularly given I believe the information we received that had we stayed on the old forms, that led to, potential, concerns. And the fact that you guys were able to turn it around on the new forms is much appreciated. And as always, I appreciate the transparency of your report.
Thank you.
Ms. Christensen?
I have one question on the printed budget. There was just a couple of items that were on page 6. It says check line 12. Is that something that's going to change, or what? What was that comment for? It's in red on page 6 of the printed budget. I don't know if you have access to.
I have
Page
the
numbers.
electronic version, but I don't see where it says that.
Okay. And there was another on the previous page. I can read the titles. On the unrestricted capital outlay UCO fund, there was short-term non-instructional software subscription, and it was highlighted as that.
Oh, page 5, sorry. On my tabs, it says page 5 in your packet. It's actually page, they
Different
call it
numbers.
cover page on here. It does say check line 12. That was just a note off to the side. We will correct that.
Okay. And then the other item, it was highlighted. Was there a reason, or it just?
Sorry, say what
highlighted?
item was highlighted?
On my page 4, unrestricted capital outlay UCO fund. On top, it's a short-term non-instructional software subscription for $6,655. It was just highlighted. I was just wondering if there was a significant.
I don't think that there's a significant, sometimes the state themselves highlight some of the cells. I think that one's highlighted because that's a new piece this year, if I remember correctly.
And thank you for working hard on all the budget stuff.
My pleasure.
I just want to also thank you for your hard work, Mrs. Berrigan. I appreciate it. If there's no more comments, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. 4-0. Next on the agenda, I believe we have the new item, which would.
G5.
Yep, which is now H9.
Yes. Previously consent item G5, consideration approval of amended MOU, Memorandum of Understanding with the Educational Support Bargaining Agreement, PVSEA. Dr. Holmes?
Madam President Pro Tem, members of the board, we're asking your approval of the amendment of the MOU that was approved by the governing board in August 4th of last year regarding Community Education Incentive Program, and we recommend your approval as presented.
Sorry, my mic wasn't on. One comment card, Wendy Mahler.
Good afternoon, Governing Board and Cabinet. I just have a couple questions, really. If you could just clarify what this is actually covering. Is it for only mascot, or is it for all of community ed? And then just hearing it sounds like this was approved last year, so why are we retroactively going for this from 2021? I understand this child care stabilization grant began in 2021 under the American Rescue Plan. And so I believe this grant should go through 2023 or 2024. And with that being said, part of getting the grant money, which is a great way to help subsidize and maintain these teachers to cover our mascot program. I think you guys, as a district, we do a great job with the mascot program and the community education. My son has used it, and I think it's a great, excellent program for our community and our children. It's awesome. And my only other concern is that there is a stipulation that we strongly follow the CDC's guidelines with their guidance. So we all know what happened in COVID, and we shut down and we masked. And so knowing that is a little tag on accepting this money. I was just wondering if you could answer some of those questions. Thank you. Have a great day.
May I have a motion for consideration and approval of amended MOU to the Education Support Professional Bargaining Agreement with PVSEA?
So moved.
President Pro Tem Baker, Dr. Holmes, just to provide a little clarification, can you explain the revisions since the October 20 to 25 days, and it covers camps only, is that correct?
Yes, camps only, and camps for the district recess days.
Okay. Was there any of those questions that you were able to answer that were mentioned a moment ago?
The only one that I heard that I thought would be, I would clarify that this was the original memo, so it was back last August that we asked that it be approved retroactive. So that was part of the original memo.
Thank you, Dr. Holmes. Do any governing board members have any comments? Ms. Christensen?
Point of clarification, when you say retroactively approved, are there any dollars with that, or just approved retroactively? You're just saying it was presented before and we're approving it from, can you just clarify what that means?
It means that the implementation of this incentive program had occurred prior to the governing board, it being presented to the governing board. Though to further clarify, you would have actually approved the individuals receiving the dollar amounts and individual pay lines when they occurred. You just didn't have formal notification of the program itself.
Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously 4-0. Next on the agenda, we have G9, which is now H10. Dr. Bales?
Thank you, President Pro Tem Baker. Consideration and approval of Leadership Secondary Administrative Certified Travel request as presented.
I have one comment card on this. Nicole Klutwick.
Hi, not a shocker. I'm talking about fiscal responsibility again. I know this board really prides itself on not rubber stamping things, which is why I'm really concerned that we keep having these travel things come through with $0 associated. As this board approves it, you have no idea if you're approving this for $20,000 or $2,000. But regardless of what's spent, you've approved it and it's going to get spent. I just find it very, very odd that we have these two travel things, and we have, as a community member, as a taxpayer, I have no idea how much is being spent on this travel. None. And neither do you as a board member. And yet it's still on the consent agenda to just get approved without discussion, without knowledge, without any additional information. And I just think that should change in the future. Thank you.
May I have a motion for consideration and approval of Leadership Secondary Administrative Certified Employee Travel Requests?
So moved.
Any board member or Dr. Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I would just appreciate a little clarification on why there is no dollar amount attached, but what the restrictions are on travel funds.
Right. So we do have checks and balances throughout the process that starts with, like the immediate supervisor, building level supervisor, assistant superintendents. We have both board policy as well as GAO guidelines at the state that tell us some of those parameters. They are reviewed specific dollar amounts for registrations, flights, all those kinds of things. And travel reimbursements is set by the state for mileage reimbursement. We have set amounts for meal reimbursements by the meal, by the location and such, so that we have all these parameters in place. It certainly is something that we've done like this for many, many years, but if it is something that you want more information on, we're happy to look at adding more information to that as well. But we do have, I think, sufficient checks and balances to make sure that we are spending the dollars wisely and that the appropriate immediate supervisors, before they make a recommendation to cabinet for approval, has gone through that process.
Meaning that it's not likely we would be quote unquote surprised by the amount that would be expended.
I don't believe so. I mean, certainly travel costs are up these days. That's why we've been limiting significant, travel across the district, and trying to focus on just, what's going to have most meaningful impact on instruction or such, but or professional development where we think it's necessary. Ms. Berrigan, is there anything you would want to add to the kind of the guidelines that I tried to summarize?
No, I think you did a nice job. The GOA state guidelines also stipulate the amount of hotel reimbursement that's allowable by location. And when there's travel, it's not as though there's a blank check. First of all, there are limitations based off of state reimbursement levels, and budgets have been set that include portions of travel in there. And so nobody can exceed their school site or their department's budget related to travel. And we do know those amounts because we have those accounted for, and we can share that with anybody at any time.
Thank you, Mrs. Berrigan. Anyone else? Mrs. Christensen?
If we know those amounts ahead of time, it would be nice to provide that information to the board. As you know, I'm clerk this quarter, and a lot of the expenditures that come through, when I ask, it says, well, the board already approved that. And it does come as a surprise to me when I have to approve it. So and again, I'm new, and as Mrs. Greenberg stated, she's done this a long time. I have not. And I just have a difficult time approving things where I don't know what the amount is. I do have a question. What is JAG? It's a annual National JAG training seminar.
Mr. Long?
JAG is what it's known as Jobs for Arizona Graduates. It works with, the philosophy is building partnerships and working with students to keep them in school and employability skills. So in the end, it's beneficial to us to try to keep those students in our district and not drop out.
Sounds like a good thing. Yeah.
Any other comments from the board? Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Motion passes 4-0. Next on the agenda was G11, and now it is H11. We have one comment card from Emily Wagner.
Thank you. I just want to preface by saying that I do have a child who attends a school in the district, and I love when our kids have access to the latest technology. This particular expenditure is for 1,500 Chromebooks at the cost of $739,221.81, which comes out to $492.81 per Chromebook. So my son received a brand new Chromebook this year when he started high school. had not been used by anybody else. So I took his Chromebook as an example just to see how much these are going for on Amazon. His exact model goes for $125. So even if you look at the most, blinged out version of the Chromebook, even those are $259, and an extended 4-year warranty on those brand new Chromebooks that come with cases and touchscreens and 360 swivel displays is still only $79.99. So even if you want to tack on a 4-year warranty along with a brand new top of the line Chromebook, you're still very below that $492.81. So this is just a little example of a much larger issue. This is coming out of the bond fund. And it just seems to me that government bureaucracies think that they're money trees that we can plant, and we can continuously disrespect taxpayer money by planting a tree and continuously harvesting from it. You would never run a small business or your household in this manner. I understand you have contracts with people, and that, I guess, allows them to overinflate the price. But again, this is one small expenditure in a much, much larger fund. And if you want taxpayers to feel respected enough to vote yes on future bonds, we need to show them that we respect the dollars they already have given you. Thank you.
May I have a motion for consideration to approve purchase from current PV contract 22-02 PV for warranties and Chromebook devices?
So moved.
Dr. Bales, do you have any clarification on that, or?
Excuse me, just as, some information that we did provide the board. This was a recommendation from our director, Jeff Billings. Our assistant director, Sam Doyle, is here. We also answer some questions if necessary. And the purchasing department for these 1,500 new Chromebooks can be purchased to replace existing Chromebooks that are now at end of life. That is, for example, 6 years old, and that no longer can be serviced. It's also the recommendation to extend the warranties purchased for existing computers, those that are just at 1 year, already, that will extend their warranty and extended service to those devices for an additional 4 years beyond the 1-year manufacturing. This decision was made after reviewing the data from the current repair costs. And as you may recall, that at the governing board meeting of May 18th, we approved warranties for the new devices, the ones that are coming in. So we were trying to be proactive there. So they're doing a cost analysis to try to provide the best bang for buck. And we do have staff available to answer any questions if you have any.
Mrs. Greenberg?
Yes, in reading the memorandum, it does say that in addition to the actual book itself, included with the purchase is the management, enrollment, asset tagging cases, and warranties so that they are ready to distribute upon delivery, which I would assume is not something that Amazon could provide should we, want to purchase this through a service like that. But perhaps we could get a little more clarification on what that means.
Yeah, I think that Mrs. Doyle can come and talk about the man hours that would be necessary if they had to touch every one of these devices. Sam?
Yeah, no problem. President Pro Tem Baker, Governing Board, Dr. Bales, and Cabinet, just to clarify a couple things that is actually correct. Bundled in this cost is the device, all white glove service as far as making sure that it's managed and secured, making sure that the case, it comes with a case already on it. So they put the cases on to where once they land in PV, we're able to turn around and disperse those to students right away. It also comes with licensing fees. So we are a Google for Education district, and that comes at a cost. So it's $35 per device in order to license those with Google. The new Chromebooks that we got, actually, we took the turn to try and be a little bit more fiscally responsible. We decided as an information technology committee that the standard for K-12 was going to be interactive touchscreen Chromebooks. We decided the first year, and actually it was the first 3 years, to do the flip versions. After 3 years. We realized that that causes a lot of hinge damage, and not only that, but it's an unnecessary add and not necessarily needed. So we went a model lower that took away that flip component, but still stuck with that standard of a touchscreen device. So the actual cost of the device itself is $318. And so when you look at Chromebooks, there's obviously a million different models and varieties, but just making sure you're comparing apples to apples and that if it's interactive, not all Chromebooks have that interactive feature, and that does come at a cost.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? Ms. Christensen?
I know we don't often get quotes on these. Did we happen to get a quote on these just to see if we're getting the best price?
Yeah, so we do, we go to RFP and we have actually a contract with Bloom, which was formerly known as Troxel. And they gave us the $318 for the Acer Chromebook 511 C734 touchscreen. And if you look elsewhere, that is a very, very significantly lower cost than you can find elsewhere for that device.
Can you remember what other companies that you got quotes for?
Not off the top of my head, no. And one more thing to just add on to that, this also covers with these 1,500, it's the same as the 2,375. At the last meeting, it comes with the 5-year accidental and non-accidental coverage. So as long as you have the Chromebook in hand, even if it's hanging by wires, they will replace it and or fix it at no cost to us.
Don't we charge our families for the extra coverage?
Yes, this is a new add-on. This is something we haven't
So are
done
we
in the
not
past.
no longer going to charge our families for extended warranties?
We offer our families a $30 protection plan. And what that covers, the only time we ever charge families, whether protection plan or non-protection plan, is if it is misuse or neglect. So if, like, let's say the motherboard, the Wi-Fi card, the battery, any of those big ticket items, we would not charge a family for anything like that. So we'll continue down that path of charging families just only if and when there is misuse or neglect.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the board? Oh, Mrs. Greenberg.
No, it's not a question. I just
Okay.
want to, thank you guys for really digging into this and, making those determinations as, like, okay, maybe we don't need that model, et cetera, et cetera. And I appreciate that, we take not just the academic needs of our student, but the fiscal needs of our district into account. So appreciate it. Thank you.
I appreciate that as well, and I appreciate you taking the time to answer everyone's questions. Are there any more questions or comments? Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously, 4-0. And then next on the agenda,
Items for discussion.
items for discussion. Dr. Bills.
Gifts and donations.
Oh, yes.
Oh, sorry, everything is out of order because of those. Next on the agenda is gifts and donations. Okay, I'm going to just briefly review these donations. The Virginia G. Piper Charitable Trust donated $1,200 to several of our schools for resources that support education access to students in need. That trust donated to Cactus View, Campobello, Eagle Ridge, Echo Mountain Primary School, Hidden Hills Elementary School, Indian Bend Elementary School, Larkspur, Palomino Primary, Sunset Canyon, and Whispering Winds. Another sizable donation was Turf Monsters donated $11,826 to Shadow Mountain for turf. And then Dorito Partners donated items for the school store in the amount of $1,000 to Echo Mountain Intermediate's Being Kind store. May I have a motion for acceptance of gifts and donations, please?
So moved.
Any board members wishing to make a comment? All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously 4-0. Next on the agenda is items for discussion. Dr. Bales.
Thank you. Consideration this evening and this is first reading, for a proposed science, anatomy, and physiology, astronomy, geology curriculum resource adoption. Dr. Corson and his team will take it from here.
Thank you, Dr. Bales, President Pro Tem Baker, Governing Board members, Cabinet and guests. Robin Hayward, our K-12 Science Curriculum Specialist, will be presenting the 9-12 Science Curriculum Adoption Committee's recommendation for science curriculum resources for anatomy, physiology, astronomy, and geology. I'm pleased to introduce to you Robin Hayward, our K-12 Science Curriculum Specialist and facilitator of this committee, who will present today's recommendations.
Thank you. Anatomy and Physiology 1-2 and Astronomy Geology 1-2 are courses within the science pathway that are typically taken in students' junior or senior year in high school. Our current resources for these courses were adopted more than 10 years ago, are outdated, and online access has expired. In order to provide the most current materials along with the supplementary online resources to our students and teachers, we have conducted a resource adoption process during this school year. Tonight's presentation will include our purpose, an overview of the committee membership and process, the evaluation criteria, and the committee's recommendations, along with next steps. On behalf of the committee, On behalf of the committee, I am pleased to present our first reading of the committee's recommendations for the 9-12 Science Curriculum Resources for Anatomy, Physiology, and Astronomy, Geology. Our committee consisted of high school teachers, administrators, and parents representing a cross-section of our district. I so appreciate these members who contributed many hours to this effort, both in the committee time and outside the committee time. Our process began in November of 2022 with a call to committee, followed by requests for proposals and vendor samples in December 2022. From January to March of this year, our committee met to review our process, establish communication strategies for our stakeholder groups, review rubric and evaluation criteria, examine physical textbook resources and online tools, and we use the evaluation criteria and rubrics. The committee selected vendors and recommended which would move forward to public review. So in February, vendor videos were requested and reviewed by the committee members, and materials were made available to the community for a 60-day viewing window. This window was open from February 13th through May 11th. In May, so specifically May 12th, the committee met to review the proposals, the rubric results, feedback from stakeholders, online resources, and physical textbook resources to make the recommendations to the board. Throughout the process, the committee evaluated the curriculum resources using a comprehensive rubric. The criteria included in this rubric involved alignment with the Arizona Science Standards, which provided the committee with the opportunity to select materials best aligned to the vision of these standards, the quality of print and electronic resources for scaffolding of concepts and skills, and embedding of critical thinking and creativity tasks. We also looked at differentiated materials for such groups as gifted students, students with special needs, and our English language learners. Also, robustness of training and consultation plans to support the teachers before and during implementation. The criteria we used was instrumental in analyzing these resources. The committee recommends that our Anatomy and Physiology course be supported with Hole's Essentials of Anatomy and Physiology from McGraw-Hill. The committee found this resource valuable because it utilizes real-world phenomenon, case studies, and project-based learning to engage students. The online component provides a variety of interactive simulations, online practice, and differentiation tools to support student learning. The total cost for 7 years for supporting this course is estimated at $75,348.40. This includes 320 student bundles, so physical textbooks with online resources, and 120 standalone student editions, so physical books. And the resources for this course will be used by all of the comprehensive high schools, so Horizon, North Canyon, Pinnacle, Paradise Valley, and Shadow Mountain High School. The committee recommends that astronomy be supported by Foundations of Astronomy from Cengage. The committee found this resource valuable because it makes real-world connections and has excellent graphics and updated astronomy information. The online component includes activities, tutorials, and virtual labs and assessments to support student learning. The total cost for 7 years is estimated at $31,849.20. This includes 180 student bundles. These resources, so that's physical and online access, these resources will be used by Paradise Valley High School, PV Online, and Sweetwater Community School. And third recommendation, the committee recommends that geology, we'll move a slide, there we go. The committee recommends that geology be supported with Geology Earth in Perspective from Cengage. The committee found this resource valuable because it includes real-world connections, has excellent visuals, is well organized and sequenced. The online component includes activities, animations, and assessments to support student learning. The total cost for 7 years is estimated at $25,693.20. This includes 180 student bundles. These resources will be used by Paradise Valley High School, PV Online, and Sweetwater Community School. Our goal is for all teachers to have access to this new curriculum, if approved, by the beginning of the fall semester 2023. Teachers will have multiple opportunities to attend professional development sessions during the next school year. Specifically, McGraw-Hill does provide professional development at no cost for the first year, while Cengage does provide asynchronous virtual or on-site professional development for the life of the adoption for the entire 7 years. And Cengage also provides teachers teachers can schedule a one-on-one session with their digital solutions specialist to work through the online platform. Yep. Thank you again, President Pro Tem Baker, Board, Cabinet, and guests for allowing me to present the committee's recommendation. At this time, Dr. Corson and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Panzera?
Yeah, so these are updating what we already have at schools. Programs already going on. That's why some are at 3 schools and some are at 5 schools.
Correct. The astronomy geology course was previously offered at another one of the comprehensive high schools at Shadow Mountain, but as of next year, they're transitioning to a different pathway. But yes, it was intent to update resources because those 2 courses were not included in the adoption that we ran in 2018, 2019. So the resources were outdated.
All right, thank you.
Do you have a question, Ms. Christensen?
Do we know enrollment numbers for some of these classes, and how did you come up with the amount of licenses and textbooks that we're going to be utilizing?
Sorry, did you had to finish your question or
No.
did I cut you off? Okay. So I asked Information Technologies, so the liaison with curriculum, to pull next year's enrollment data. And so I pulled the enrollment data, but we also discussed with the principals the ability to provide class sets to the schools. So these numbers are based on enrollment, our current enrollment for next year, plus a class set for each school and about 40 books for each school that can be checked out. So these amounts do not include a textbook, a physical book to be checked out for every student, since students don't always want a physical textbook. But for every student enrolled, there is a digital license, and then there will be a book in the classroom they can use, and they can check out an additional book if they would like to.
Go ahead. I'm glad to hear you say that because I have a soon-to-be senior, and I've never seen him crack a book. He's like, "Mom, it's on the Chromebook," and I'm like, "Where are your books?" And it seems like, at least for him, he never has a book. So I don't know why his backpack is so heavy, but he doesn't have books. And so I'm I am a little bit concerned. I think this is great. I'm not concerned about the selection. It's just the reason I asked the number about the number of the students enrolled is because I know that when I looked into the math curriculum that we just recently adopted, I think we bought 35,000 licenses, and it was mainly for high school. And we only had, I think, 29,000 students. And so I was concerned that we're giving a lot of money to the publishers and extra licenses. Maybe that was in hopes more students would come back. And so I just want to know what, are we doing anything to, since we're mostly online, to tell the publishers, can we get a discount and push back? Because I'm sorry, this is such a long question, but what I was told before is they won't give us digital licenses without the exact number of books. Is that the case for this vendor?
For these particular vendors, they did have separate pricing for individual licenses, and they had a bundle price where it was the physical textbook and 7 years of licensing. So what I did is I carefully looked at how many books Pinnacle, by example, has 2 anatomy physiology teachers, and so they both would like a classroom set of up to 40, since the class sizes can be that large. So the numbers at Pinnacle were a little bit higher because so I did price out individual licenses. It just turned out that we didn't have to purchase individual licenses because the numbers worked out evenly, so that I could just do the bundles, which were more economical, so less expensive than a physical book plus the license, and then have some physical books so that we could have those additional class sets that wouldn't be potentially released to students.
Mrs. Greenberg?
As somebody who has sat here and remembers when we have spent 6 and 7 digits on, physical books, the fact that we're able to get this many for this low a cost is incredible. And so I appreciate the time and effort that's gone into looking for the best programming and curriculum that we can get at a, in my opinion, incredibly economic cost, and I appreciate that. And I guess the question is, obviously everything is a slight estimate, although you've got it down to pennies, so that's pretty good.
Well, I think that's without tax, but it's pretty close.
There we go.
Yes.
But if we need, if we need to expand, I mean, if enrollment increases and we find we need more, is that built into the contract?
Yes. So when we send out best and finals to these vendors, well, first I wanted to say that I was pleased that Cengage offered an additional 5% discount when we sent the best and final letter, because every dollar counts. But this pricing, even though this pricing that you're seeing is based on the numbers that we provided, that this contract with the vendor allows us to purchase additional books at the same price, including that 5% discount for the life of the adoption. So if sites such as Shadow Mountain chose to bring back a course, we could purchase additional books at that price.
Any other questions? Thank you. I appreciate the hard work and research that was put into this. Next on the agenda, items for discussion, Dr. Bales.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Baker. This also is a first reading, is a proposed dual language immersion curriculum resource adoption for Sandpiper. And Dr. Corson and his team will take it from here.
Thank you again, Dr. Bales, President Pro Tem Baker, Governing Board members, Cabinet and guests. Lynn Hoppus, our K-12 World Language and Dual Language Immersion Curriculum Specialist, will be presenting the K-6 Sandpiper Dual Language and Immersion Spanish Reading and Language Arts Curriculum Adoption Committee's recommendation. I'm pleased to introduce you to Lynn Hoppus, our K-12 curriculum specialist and facilitator of this committee, who will present this afternoon's recommendations.
Thank you. Sandpiper Elementary implemented the Spanish DLI program about 10 years ago, and the current model is a 50-50, meaning that during half of the instructional day, students receive instruction in Spanish and the other half in English. Both English and Spanish instruction include reading and language arts respectively, in addition to other content areas depending upon the grade level. The current resources for the K-6 Spanish Reading and Language Arts were adopted over 7 years ago and are not aligned to the Arizona World and Native Language Standards nor the ACTFL World Readiness Standards for Language Learning. In addition, the online access for current materials has expired. In order to provide consistent, aligned materials and supplementary online resources for the Sandpiper DLI students and teachers, we conducted a resource adoption during the 22-23 school year. Today's presentation will include our purpose, committee membership, timeline and process, and evaluation criteria, and the committee's recommendations along with the next steps. On behalf of the committee, I am pleased to present a first reading of the committee's recommendations for the curriculum resources for the K-6 Spanish Reading and Language Arts. Our committee consisted of Sandpiper DLI teachers and parents and DLI administrators. So I so appreciate these members who contributed many hours to this effort. Our process began in January of 2023 with a call to committee followed by requests for proposals and vendor samples. During February and March, the committee met and reviewed our process, established communication strategies for our stakeholder groups, reviewed rubric and evaluation criteria, examined physical and online resources, and requested virtual presentations. During late February and early March, our committee members listened and interacted with virtual vendor presentations. Using the evaluation criteria, the committee selected vendors and recommended which would move forward. These vendors were asked to send materials to the grade levels for teachers to examine and provide feedback. Materials were also made available to the community for the 60-day public review window. The window for reviewing materials and accessing online resources was open from February 9th through May 10th. In May, the committee met to review the proposals, feedback from stakeholders, online resources, physical textbook resources to make their recommendations to the governing board. Throughout the process, the committee evaluated the curriculum resources using a comprehensive rubric. This criteria included the alignment to the Arizona World and Native Language Arts Standards and the ACTFL World Readiness Standards for Learning Languages, the quality and comprehensiveness of primary and supplemental print and electronic materials, including summative and formative assessments, and the quality of the appropriate leveled materials to assist students to reach their intended proficiency targets. Content is presented in a context that is meaningful to the students, has real-world application, and exposes students to a variety of Spanish-speaking cultures. The quality of the professional development and consultation to support before, during, and implementation. So this criteria was instrumental in analyzing the resources. The committee recommends La Cartilla to be implemented in our K-2 classrooms. La Cartilla is a supplementary print and digital standards-based Spanish language literacy program for K-2. It is designed to engage young readers as they build foundational literacy skills. Excuse me. It also works with Listos, works with Andatologia, and Avanza. And as you can see, there are some things listed here that it does provide phonemic awareness, recognition of sounds.
I'm sorry, can I ask you to pause for one moment?
I'm sorry.
Can I just ask you to pause for one moment? I need to address the audience. I just want to remind the audience that any person interfering with the meeting in any way, including acting rudely or loudly, may be removed from the meeting to allow the business of the district to continue. So I would really like the whispering to stop. Thank you. Go ahead.
Word recognition and decoding in context, writing syllables and words, and reading and comprehension. This resource provides our DLI students with Spanish phonics instruction during the English reading and language arts portion of their day. Students will use Wonders and Really Great Reading as their phonics program. So they're getting both. Therefore, our DLI students receive phonics in both Spanish and in English. The committee also recommends Listos be implemented in K-5. It is a print and digital resource that makes learning Spanish a cultural adventure. Students travel to 20 countries and explore the language and culture through meaningful activities and foster communication and through engagement. Listos supports all K-5 Spanish classrooms. The benefits of Listos is it's a spiraled curriculum which supports students at all language learning levels, and it supports them with skills within each of the grade levels. The themes repeat across and they spiral, and as they learn more, it adds more words and things to their experience. It has differentiated activities and supports students at any grade level. Language structures spiral, grammar and vocabulary increases in complexity across the levels. Excuse me. The committee also recommends leveled learning, or Avanza, be implemented in K-6. It identifies literacy gaps by continuously assessing and measuring each student's gradual mastery of the standards. It pinpoints actionable teaching points and provides targeted instruction through phonics books, activities, authentic text, audio, games, video lessons, and quizzes. It supports all the Vista Higher Learning programs. It also allows the data to be transferred from year to year so you can see the students' progression. The committee found Avanza valuable because it includes assessment data and video lessons, mastery-based approach, personalized learning opportunities, benchmark reports, and it has wonderful parent component, which is easy to access, understand, and helps them to provide information and support their child's learning. Antología, the committee recommended, is a resource that explores the Spanish language and Hispanic cultures through a range of leveled reading selections. It meets the needs of Spanish learners in dual language elementary classrooms. It has comprehension questions, supports development of literacy skills, grammar and spelling vocabulary, and excuse me, students are able to use the language and see how it is used as a tool to construct meaning in different contexts. There's writing practice and activities developed previously. It helps to learn so that they can write multiple paragraph texts, organizing ideas, convey opinions and facts. The committee recommended Escondidos level 1 for 6th grade only. Listos only went from K to 5. Students join the adventure and learn Spanish as they travel to fascinating places in Spanish-speaking world. It builds intercultural communicative proficiency through an integrated storyline, motivating communicative, skill-oriented instruction and in practice. This is the updated version of the current adoption resource, which has been used with great success. The benefits of using this is students get to explore the culture of some Spanish-speaking countries using photos, images, and videos to build and expand their cultural knowledge. The materials provide scaffolding and support with engaging and user-friendly activities throughout the lesson, and the units become increasingly complex in order to assist students in developing their proficiency skills step by step. And here is a list of the total cost for the reading and language arts resources being recommended. Excuse me. The goal for all of our teachers to have access to the new curriculum, it is our goal, I should say, to have access to the new curriculum by the beginning of the fall semester 2023. Sandpiper teachers will be provided opportunities to attend professional development sessions before the start of school and ongoing professional learning during the 23-24 school year. All Sandpiper dual language teachers are expected to utilize the Vista Higher Learning Avanza curriculum during the 23-24 school year. Thank you for allowing me to present the committee's recommendations. At this time, Dr. Corson and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Do any governing board members have questions? Mrs. Christensen?
I just have a comment. You know, my family, one of my daughters, thinking about bringing her family back from Boise, Idaho to Phoenix. I was talking to my granddaughter Matilda about it. First thing she asked me was, do they have Spanish dual enrollment classes? I said, yes, we do. So don't let that keep you from coming here, Matilda. So I just want to let you know I'm happy we do that here.
Thank you, Mr. Pantera. Mrs. Christensen?
I'm really excited about this. This is, I believe, programs like this are a way to bring families back into our district to make PV a premier district. So thank you for your due diligence. I do have a question on the vendor and the cost. Is this total? Is this an all or not? I know we're going to be voting on it in a in an additional meeting, but it seems like the committee's recommending all of them. Is that the case, that they all work together, or can we choose? Or I just wanted.
They all work together.
Mhm.
And so Avanza, the one that is, it allows them all to talk to each other. The other piece with Avanza that they really like is, if you're familiar with reading A to Z, it's very similar to that. It provides opportunities for extra outside reading. The parents get to see the reports, and it's very much the parents were very, very happy to be able to see that they could see their students' progression. Because as you know, a DLI student is measured by their proficiency targets. So they're wanting to see, how is my child doing? The teachers really like the fact that this program would fit into their half day. As you know, the instructional minutes are just dear, and to try and get it all in one, that's why they chose this program too. They felt they could get most of this program done during their time that they had.
Thank you for all the work you've done.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you. I appreciate the presentation. Before we adjourn, I would like to remind you that the next regular board meeting will be on Thursday, June 22nd of 2023 at 5 p.m. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously 4-0. Thank you.